Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to this week's episode of In Therapy, where we follow real people on their therapeutic journeys. This week, we're catching up with Beverly, and we're exploring the incredibly important theme of anger. Anger is an emotion which sometimes in therapeutic circles can get a bad rap, an emotion that we shouldn't be feeling. I have a slightly different perspective. I think anger is an incredibly important emotion. Apart from many other things, anger is often the fuel behind recognizing and enforcing our boundaries, our ability to say no to other people, our ability ultimately to have the boundaries we need to really be able to act in a way which is loving and caring towards ourselves. Because to say yes to ourselves, we have to be able to say no to others. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, click the bell icon, and you'll be notified as new episodes are released. And do follow my Instagram at Alex Howard Therapy for daily inspiration and support. This week, we catch up with 65-year-old Beverly, who's at a crossroads in her life. Looking back, there's never been anything that she has felt passionate about. Last time we looked at how the coping strategies that we form as children, especially when dealing with trauma, can affect us later in life. Today we'll be continuing on a similar theme, this time looking at her relationship with anger. Bev, it's lovely to see you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
How have you been since last time?
Well, it's probably been one of the most difficult fortnights I've had in a long time, especially the second half of it. Because initially, after the last session, I actually felt quite a lot better the day after.
Yeah.
And then I was actually going away. I was going to see family at the weekend. And I was feeling quite positive, quite upbeat, felt I could kind of deal with everything. And then I had a situation that happened to do with family, and just the severity of how upset I got with it. And sorry, this is a bit personal as well to family. I'd like this not, if we can avoid, cut these bits out, really.
What do you think it was about it that was so triggering for you?
Right, I think there's two things. I think one, it was to do with, and I realised how difficult this is for me, to ask for having my needs met. Because A, I don't expect them to be met. B, I expect there to be trouble when they're met. And if they are or aren't met, I'm going to be punished for them being met.
Good. I'm glad that you could see it so clearly.
I don't think I kind of made all those connections straight away. It took me a day or so to do that. And I also knew it was my interior critic that was ranting at me, you don't deserve anybody to be doing this for you. Who the hell do you think you are? And why are you on these stupid diets anyway? It was colossal, really. I mean, to the point I couldn't sleep on Thursday night.
And you were travelling up on the Friday?
And I was travelling up on the Friday. Fortunately, I wasn't driving. I wouldn't have liked to have driven. I think I take them only very rarely when I'm desperate. I think I took a sleeping pill about 3 a.m. And I meditated. I tried to calm my nervous. I did every damn thing apart from a bottle of wine, which might have been the only answer, but I avoided that.
But it sounds like for you, in a sense, it was right back being in childhood, and it was being an experience of, but in a sense, being in childhood in the way that it wasn't, like someone actually was attending to your needs. And in a sense, it sounds like that was outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, and it really brought home to me how difficult I find that. I mean, friends have always said that they find me sometimes fiercely independent. I think one friend called me. But I think it's this, I can get help if I'm sort of paying for help, if you like. Which is interesting because I'm not here. So it's
but you're paying with your presence and telling your story.
Yes. So there's a quid pro quo, isn't there?
Exactly.
Whereas if there isn't a quid pro quo, if I'm just getting something because I'm getting something, if that makes sense, you know, it calls into question, how am I worthy for this? I don't deserve this. There's going to be a payback for this.
Like, and like, you shouldn't have needs, and why are you being so fussy, and why are you, so there's an inner critic piece, but there's also a piece that it sounds like comes up, which you feel like that little girl again.
Yeah.
Up until, so this happened the Thursday night after our last session, or was there a week? A few days in between?
So quite quickly. So that, I think our session was Tuesday. This was the Thursday.
And how were you on the before this happens?
I thought I was okay.
Okay.
You know, I think I was aware that there was quite a bit of work to do, and I think I was a bit anxious also because I knew I wouldn't be able to do anything over the weekend.
Okay.
So I think I was a bit sad almost about that, you know, I'd got all this new material or new exercise to work on that I knew I couldn't do.
And did it feel like what happened was kind of how it normally happens, or did it feel like it was more magnified and more intense than it would normally be?
I think it felt more magnified and intense.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it was a pattern that I've run before, probably a million times.
Yeah.
And I've also realised since I've come back anyway, a lot more work on the inner critic, that I always knew my inner critic was really strong, but I didn't realise how damn prevalent it was. It's like my whole life is run from my inner critic, which was a bit of a, I mean, I know, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, well, it's also the thing that often happens is our inner critic has us in check. Like we're in our box and we sort of know the edges and where we can go and where we can't go. And then in a sense, what we've been doing together over the last month or so is actually opening you up and taking some steps outside of your box and kind of coming a bit more emotionally and energetically out into the world. And what can happen when we do that is suddenly the inner critic has a backlash. And it's like it wants to knock us back down to get us back into that place because it believes that you're not safe unless you're kind of restrained and held back and being fiercely independent. That its narrative is, I believe its narrative is, that it needs to protect you from your mom, your dad, that environment. So it's trying to put you back in the place where it thinks you're safe.
Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense. But what was also, again, I almost had a panic attack. I didn't, but it really freaked me out, was the first time I did the exercise from the heart program. And that was kind of when I'd come back from the weekend. And I'd listened to the module. I've probably done my usual and overdone it because I could not, for the life in me, just jump to module 3 of the heart program. I just couldn't, I could not do it. I thought I'm going to have to, so I did the introductory ones on the train going up north and coming back down. And then I did module 1 before, and I just had to really talk to myself and say, Beverly, you do not need module 2. You've done enough meditation in your life. You don't need that one right now. Certainly go and look at it at some point because there might be some useful tips in there, things you don't know, but you do not need to do it now. And then I said, this is visualization. But I haven't done visualization in the program. And then I really had to say, Bev, you've done visualization for years on and off, all your life. Will you realize you do not have to do module 2? So I managed to leave out module 2.
Well done.
Something. So I'd done the module, and then I think you do the exercise in the module.
Yeah, with the inner critic. Yeah.
And at that time, I was feeling quite tired because I had a busy weekend up north. I'd done all these other modules.
And you hadn't slept on Thursday nights.
I hadn't slept on Thursday, and I hadn't slept a lot while I was up north either, because just one thing and another. So this was probably the Wednesday. And I just thought, you're tired, just leave the exercise. Do the exercise another time. But of course, no, I couldn't do that, could I? Just try it. Just do it again, it'll be fine. So I did it, and I don't know that I really got as calm and as strong as I could have done. But when I visualized my inner critic, and I had a real struggle, do I want a perspex screen or a glass screen? It took me about 3 minutes to decide which one of those I wanted. So it just kind of shows I wasn't feeling very kind of centered, really. Yeah. Anyway, when I visualized my inner critic, I got my mum and my dad. And my instant reaction was, I don't want you to. I just don't want you to in my head. So I rejected them. And then what I got was a devil, bright red, horns, tail, the lot, and really big. So I started getting a little bit, this is just getting ridiculous. And then I asked what it wanted, and the statement I got was to be more like us. And then I felt I had loads of people being the inner critic. And I just turned everything off, and I just thought, I've just got to step away from this. This is just
overwhelming.
Yeah. And I think I had a hot bath and did some meditation and tried to calm down and make sense of it all, because I really was not in great shape at all at this point.
Well, it sounds like also there was a kind of accumulation of different things that were happening, right? Like you were more open and more sensitive, and then you had the situation with going to visit family, and then you have the fact you hadn't had enough sleep, and then you've got the achiever pusher pattern that's coming in, and then you're doing it and it's kind of, you're already open and vulnerable, and some intense stuff comes up. So it's not any one of those pieces, but the cumulative effect is that, and that's why going at your own speed becomes so important, because it sounds like what's happened is that the kind of good little girl that wants to please everyone and wants to do it right and wants to sort of, be seen to be following through has had a bit too much energy over the last week or two. Like she's been running the show a bit too much.
Yeah, yes. And I think, and I also realized what had happened, that, and again, it goes back to stuff you said, that because I'd rejected what I'd got to start with, it had come back at me even stronger. This whole, what you resist persists thing. I thought that was really quite interesting.
So say a bit more about that, what it had got you to start with.
Sorry?
So you're saying rejecting what it had got you to start with.
Yes, because it gave me my mum and dad to begin with.
Yeah.
And I rejected that.
Yeah.
So I kind of pushed against that, so it came back even stronger.
Yeah. How is your inner critic? So this brings us up to roughly the sort of Monday, Tuesday, so about a week ago.
Yeah.
So just run me through the last week.
God, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, because I left it a bit, and then I did the exercise again, but actually did the presence process, and then went into the strength and calming meditation. So I got myself in a much better place.
Yeah. Okay, good.
To actually deal with it, and that was better. And in fact, that was quite emotional, because in that one I had my mum, I still had all three.
Your mum, your dad, the devil.
Yeah. I was just thought, oh my God, I've got to say this on screen. They're gonna definitely come in the white van and carry me away.
It's waiting outside, actually.
All right, so can
for me, not for you.
As long as it can just take me home, save me the tube. But this time they weren't. They were a little bit fainter. And when I explained how I was feeling because of what they were all doing, my mum and dad both started to cry.
Wow.
In it, which was difficult.
What was difficult in what way?
Because I just felt, I suppose it was just such a mixture of them. I just felt really sad, seeing them so sad. And I felt so sad.
Sad for them or sad for you?
Probably sad for me.
Okay.
It was just a hard picture to sort of, because I suppose I know in my heart that they were doing their damn best.
But there's a difference between doing their best and giving you what you need.
Yeah. And it was a chasm, really.
Yeah, and one has to be careful to not undermine how they feel by going into a pattern of, well, they did their best and I know that they basically loved me, therefore I'm not allowed to have my feelings.
Yes.
As opposed to, they did their best, I know that they loved me, and I feel all of these things, and I have a right to feel these things, and actually it's healthy for me to feel these things.
And what came out of that was that, again, this feeling they wanted to keep me safe. And the other thing that came out of it was they also didn't want me to be disappointed.
Say more about that.
they didn't want me to try at something that wouldn't work out. My mum used to have this thing, pride comes before a fall kind of thing, that you might, she didn't want me to show myself up. Didn't want me to go out there and I suppose get egg on my face kind of thing. So I was taking a risk.
So having elocution lessons actually helps you get better at doing it the right way, as opposed to doing things that you might want to do, but you might fail at those things.
Yeah.
So it's almost like more work on being a good girl and being perfect and doing it right.
Yes.
Which then linking back to a key piece of why you're here, like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Like, what does this next chapter of your life look like? What is your heart's desire? And I think that's why understanding these dynamics is so important. Because if we look at this, it's like you've learned that how you feel and what you want is less important than what other people think and how you are perceived by people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's led me into thinking about other things as well, that I think there's a fear that, because I can identify very well with the collapsed self and the idealized self, but it's mixed. But I don't know where my authentic self is. I don't even know if, and this is going to sound ridiculous, I don't even know if I've got one. I mean, I'm sure I must have, but I don't know what it looks like. And there's that fear, well, if I find it, what if there's nothing there?
So there's a set of beliefs that you don't know who you are, and who you are might not be likable, might not be lovable, might not be acceptable.
Absolutely. And there's also a sense that, and this has been a hard one to take on board this last week, that I would say all my achievements, by and large, in my life have been run from the interior critic achiever pattern. There's been that force, that push to almost make me do it.
Yeah.
But then it runs, and I think this was something else that was in a module. I think so anyway, it doesn't matter. But then it kind of runs out of steam. And so because
it's not fueled by your true heart and passion.
Exactly.
It's fueled by like an idea that I should do this, or this would be good to do. But when it really gets to it, your heart's not really in it.
Or if my heart is in it, I think the other thing that happens is that my inner critic will knock it back.
Yes.
You've done it for long enough now. You're just going to upset yourself if you do any more. It'll be too hard for you if you do any more.
Whose voice is that?
A bit my dad's, I think,
right.
in that one. Because there's this thing of don't upset yourself. So don't do any more now. I'm thinking particularly of when I did all the counselling work, because I really did love that. And I got so far. I mean, for various reasons, it was very hard to. But I do remember my husband at the time saying, "Oh, I just think you've not got the right mentality for this. You'll just get too upset by your clients."
And is that actually what was happening?
At the time, I truthfully can't remember. I think I was a bit stressed anyway. I was doing dentistry. I was doing all the CPD associated with dentistry. I was doing the counselling.
So you had a lot of loads already.
And he got PTSD. I mean, I was probably just upset by everything. If I just had the counselling to do and good supervision, I suspect I might have been all right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just to complete the narrative then from the last couple of weeks. So how have you been the last 4 or 5 days?
Just trying to think. Where are we now? We're Tuesday, aren't we? It's been up and down. I've had sort of one day that felt really good, where I'd done the meditation. Again, my health was starting to feel better as well, because that's suffered as a result. But I think that can probably be expected.
Yes.
I think that was Saturday, and I'd been really kind to myself. I'd been making sure I'd had nice baths, lavender oil, doing the meditations, eating good food. I'd been sleeping better. So I was really starting to try and do my journal and really trying to make, because there really has been, probably sound like I'm talking 10 to the dozen, but there's been so much.
Yeah, it's been intense. I really hear that.
Hitting me. Because there's other stuff as well that's coming up. It's just like it's coming at me faster than I can see. So
what's the other stuff that's coming up?
Let's have a think. I know I've been looking at a perfectionist pattern, and I was pleased about that on Friday, because normally So I think it's a bit of a northern thing, you clean your house once a week, probably my mother. Even though there's just me lives there, it can't be that dirty really. And I actually, a really good friend of mine, I said, do you want to go for a walk on Friday? She said, Friday morning, but you clean your house on a Friday morning.
That's funny.
What's happening to you? And I said, I'm not going to do it. So there's been a few things like that with the perfectionist pattern that I know is getting, it's baby steps, I know, but it's getting better. The other thing that I think's hit me is that I think underneath all this sadness that I'm carrying, that there's probably a lot of anger and jealousy. And I've accessed it a little bit over the years, but I'm a bit nervous about that. I'm aware because I don't know what to do with it all.
Who's the jealousy towards?
Oh, everybody. Because every bugger seems to have a better life than me.
That's interesting. And the anger?
Well, not everybody, but there's that feeling.
I get it. And the anger? Is it linked into that jealousy? Or?
I think it's linked into the jealousy, and there's anger towards myself, I think, as well. For making such a cock up of my life, really. That's
your inner critic, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think yeah, it is.
There's an interesting dynamic between our inner critic and our anger. That what happens is our inner critic takes our power because it's part of us, right? Like it's not some separate being that lives out. It's part of our psyche and our experience. When we have a harsh and a vicious inner critic, it's taking our power and it's using it against us.
Yeah.
So the viciousness, the cruelty, the unkindness of your inner critic, that is your power turned against you.
Yeah.
And what happens is rather than being powerful in the world and going, right, this is what I want to do and I'm going to go and do it, we tend to turn inwards because that, rather than kind of coming through us as our life force to make things happen, that anger has been turned against us. One of the ways or part of the way to reclaim your power from your inner critic is to allow yourself to have your anger. Because our personal power is fueled by the same energy that is our anger. If we shut our anger off, we shut our power off. And I'm not talking about throwing your anger at people and being angry, just being a kind of vomiting anger at people. What I mean is the energy of your anger.
Yeah.
Like the power of your anger.
Yeah, I understand.
What has been historically your relationship with anger? Do you let yourself feel anger? And if you do, how does that go? Like what's the story there?
Occasionally I might. I do remember at work being really upset by how I was treated. And it's interesting, again, that was another thing that flagged up for me, that I realised I've been treated at work, generally in the workplace, how my inner critic treats me. So
isn't that a strange coincidence?
So it's the outside world treating you as your inside world is. I kind of understand that.
Well, and just to be clear, the way that happens is that we normalize to being treated in a certain way. So when someone treats us that way, rather than putting up a boundary and saying, please don't speak to me that way, or that's completely unacceptable, stop it, we just take it, which then, in a sense, we teach people how to treat us by the fact that we give permission and we don't put a boundary up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So I've never been particularly very good at confrontation. I do remember this time at work and there's a staff room upstairs with a load of books up there, and I went up there and I chucked all the books from one end of the staff room to the other. There was nobody in there at the time.
That must have been so satisfying.
It was. I didn't even pick them up. I've never found out who picked all those books up because I left them. I was so furious. And then another time I was so angry, I slammed my surgery door to the point my nameplate with my letters underneath all fell off onto the floor on the other side.
But what that tells me is that you probably don't let yourself have the little bits of anger day to day.
Yeah.
That it builds up to a point that it's an explosion. Right?
Yeah.
And I want to be clear, the point I'm making is not that one should throw their anger around to other people. It's having enough access to the energy of our anger to be able to put up and hold a boundary. And actually, the more that we own and integrate our anger, the cleaner the boundary becomes. the less reactive it becomes, the less there's a sort of underhanded comment, like it's just a very clean, this is my boundaries being violated and it's not okay.
Yeah.
What's been your, so there are these moments where anger's built up, and then it's gone pop. What are some of those, what's been the relationship more day to day? Things have happened that you've just let go, or you've attracted those people that have sort of violated your boundaries, or talk me through that a bit more.
I'm not aware that I've been in a situation. I'm just trying to think if I have been in a situation that's ended up me being angry or feeling angry. So I suspect I just let them go ordinarily.
Yeah, because anyone that's living in the world, and you've lived in the world your whole life.
Yeah.
Sorry, what I mean is like lived in the kind of real world as opposed to lived in a sort of very kind of sheltered world.
Yeah.
Will have things that irritate them.
Yeah.
So to feel angry and annoyed on a kind of ongoing, from here and there, not obviously every minute of every day, but to have moments in the week where one feels angry, moments in the week where one feels sad, moments in the week where one feels concerned. Like, that's a normal emotional life. So when you say, I can't think of anything that's causing me to be angry, what I hear is you've not been in touch of how you feel. Because there would have been lots of things that would have, like I can think of 2 or 3 examples in the last 2 or 3 days where I felt angry. Doesn't mean that I've thrown it around, doesn't mean that I've lived there for very long, but things have happened and I've had a rising of that boundaries being violated, and I feel irritated by that. So it's something about your relationship with your anger.
I can accept that. I mean, the only thing I think about was a taxi not turning up, and I was quite angry with the taxi company. So that's one incident in 3 or 4 weeks, and then, as you said, there must have been more than that. I was quite pleased. There was something that was more upset than, well, it was anger as well with my niece, and I did manage to discuss that through with her, which at one point I wouldn't have been able to do that.
What do you believe about anger? What's the, and not what do you think is the right answer to the question, but like what historically have been your beliefs about anger?
I suppose that it was something that, again, good girls didn't get angry.
Right. And you being angry would also be you have owning your autonomy and owning your needs in a way that you weren't allowed to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because of that, I can be quite chameleon like that. I'll go along with, with what other people want me to do, or what they like
which you
doing.
were conditioned very strongly to do.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting. We talk about like the terrible twos as being this terrible age where children start saying no all the time.
Yeah.
But actually, it's really important and really healthy for children to go through that stage, because it's like they're beginning the process of moving from being completely egocentric or egocentric, where they're completely merged with their environment. And part of their separation from mother and father is the no, because I'm here and you're there. Up until that point, they're just completely merged anyway. So there's something that's really healthy about saying no, this is my boundary. You want that and I want this, and I'm going to say no. And of course that's a bit of a messy process for 2-year-olds, and kids go through it again, often around sort of 6, 7, 8, they go through it again, 11, 12. There's different phases where the more we separate and the more that we develop our sense of our own will and our own desires and our own wishes, we develop the boundaries, and the no is the way of enacting the boundary. My sense is that you weren't fully allowed to go through that developmental stage.
Oh gosh, no. No, I didn't have a rebellion until I was in my 40s.
Right.
No, I would have been terrified to have rebelled.
Yeah. As we talk about it now, what do you feel?
The first word that came was fed up.
So tell me about fed up.
I think because of just what's happened, certainly this last week, it's just been exhausting. Because there's just been so much coming at me. And I know, again, it's in a critic, there's this, my God, look at what you've done with your life and what you could have done. and you got to this age now and you're still dealing with this stuff. So and I know, really recognise that is inner critic coming up. But, you know, it's getting so bored of hearing this. And I'm a bit, I was going to say I'm a bit tired to fight against it almost. It feels like I just feel a bit exhausted.
Yeah.
Part of me just wants to smoke 20 cigarettes, don't smoke anymore, what I used to, have a bottle of wine, take some drugs and get completely out of my head. You know,
That's good.
You know, so I just don't. So I stop having to be in here anymore.
So here's what I think is going on. Part of what's going on. We've got this new journey that you're on, and you're sincerely committed to that journey.
Yeah.
Right. You're not here primarily because of an achiever pattern. I really feel your presence and your willingness and your commitment to be here. And what happens is that achiever pattern and that little girl that wants to please me and wants to please the audience and wants to please everyone is being hijacked by this push. I need to go harder, do it faster, do it perfectly, do it well. I mustn't let Alex down. I mustn't let anyone else down. I mustn't let myself down. And then your inner critic starts piling on top of that as well and starts weaponizing that against you and starts beating up on you. And then there's a part of you that's just like, fuck this whole thing, right? Like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I want to hear that voice. So the place in you, and I know, and I really want to qualify, I know it's not all of how you feel, and I know that ultimately in your heart, you do want to be here. Otherwise, I'd be having a different conversation with you. But I really want to energize for a moment that voice that's just like, fuck this whole thing. I want to go and get pissed. I want to get drunk. I want to get high. Whatever. Like, tell me about that voice.
The first thing was, I want to go have some fun.
Right. Yeah.
Where I don't have to think about who I am, what I am, how I can make my life better. I just want to get out my head, have some fun, and dance for 15 hours.
How does it feel to say that? You feel really alive to me right now.
Liberating.
Yeah. What do you feel in your body saying that?
Feels lighter.
What do you feel in your heart?
Heart still feels a bit sad. And that's another thing that flagged up this last week is if I think of love and compassion, or I'm doing a meditation on that, rather than that having a link with joy, it's often a link with sadness and tears.
What's that about? That sadness and tears that you feel. What's that about?
Whether it's because the love in my life has felt so corrupted one way or another, that has caused me a lot of pain, because the people that I loved did cause me pain unintentionally. And then, of course, again, I've repeated, not with everybody, but then I've repeated that to a certain extent in relationships.
Just to reflect back what happens here in this dynamic, right?
Yeah.
So this voice comes forth. I want to get drunk. I want to get high. I want to party. I want to have fun. I can see it again. Like your face kind of lights up. And then what comes in is this dampening, like this analysis, this story, this history, that then squashes that.
Yeah.
Do you notice that?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And again, it goes back
which
to
sucks the juice, right? It takes away just the spot, because it's not ultimately that necessarily you need to go and get drunk and smoke a load of cigarettes and get high. It's that part of you wants to be alive, and it wants to have fun, and it wants to see where things go and follow the flow of things, and not be constrained by this good little girl that's following the rules and being pushed and trying to appease this vicious inner critic that's judging her. It just wants to get free of all of that.
Yeah.
But it's like, as it comes forth and it gets some momentum, it then gets squashed back down again.
Yeah.
So say more about that, like the squashing down of it.
Well, I think it happened, I mean, historically it happened a lot, or at least I can remember instances of it when I was growing up. You know, that I'd get something I was excited about, or a friend I'd get excited about, and that was always squashed by my mum, one way and another.
So it's partly your inner critic, your internalized mum, that comes in, that squashes it back down.
Yeah. And I mean, I met somebody's like the boy next door that my mum really, really wanted me to end up marrying.
You said,
said about that. And then I'd met somebody at university that I fell head over heels in love with. And basically, my parents told me, in fact, my mum got my dad to come to him, which was really unusual for him to do anything like this. And I remember being so excited because I'd got a letter from this guy. It was Christmas holidays. And he came into my bedroom and he said that my mum was she was so judgmental and racist. And that this guy happened to be Irish. And I remember my father coming to my bedroom and saying, I'm sorry, but your mum and I have had a talk, and if you get mixed up with this Irish guy at university rather than the guy I was seeing at home, because at the time I was kind of almost dating both of them, you're not welcome back at home anymore.
How did you feel?
I'm crying now. I was devastated.
Did you feel angry?
No, I don't remember feeling angry, interestingly enough. I should have been. I should have been raging.
Right. You should. Because your boundary was violated.
Yeah.
You were old enough to make your own choices.
Yes, because
it wasn't their place to interfere.
No, I would have been 19 by then, I think.
You were old enough to make your own choices.
And of course, when I got back to university, I ended the relationship. He'd got not a clue why. And I couldn't tell him. Couldn't even verbalise it. And I'm still talking about it now, 50, 40, whatever it is.
But it's interesting that where your system goes is sadness.
Yeah.
Not that that's inappropriate. That's
I just didn't have that
But for me, the emotion that's missing is the anger.
Yeah.
Like this you're violating my boundary.
Yeah.
You know, I this is what I want. And, you know, it's reasonable for a parent to try and offer constructive counsel and say, look, I notice you're sort of seeing two people. This could end up in a bit of a car crash. Like, have you thought about that?
Yeah.
You know, we really like this guy and we're just mindful of you don't hurt his feelings. But what happened was a manipulation and a violation of your will, of your choice. Effectively, we're going to take away your safety and security of home if we don't do what we tell you to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I can imagine a more, normal is not the right word, but a kind of more typical response from a teenage girl would have been, how fucking dare you tell me what to do with my life?
Yeah.
And don't worry about kicking me out of home because I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And a kind of like potentially an over assertion of will, but a sense of like, this is my boundary. Get the fuck out. You have no right to tell me what to do.
Yeah. That would have been an appropriate response. I was too messed up. When I look back at it now, I didn't realise at the time. Yeah. But, you know, I don't think I'd ever really recovered from the breakdown at 11, 12.
Yeah.
So,
which again was a violation of your boundaries and of your will. As we talk about this now, so I really hear that there's some sadness that's there. As I talk about the permission to have the anger and the rage, does any of that start to arise?
It does actually. Yeah, I do.
So what do you feel?
I actually feel quite angry.
Yeah. How does it describe how that actually feels in your body?
It feels better than all this sadness. It feels a bit like a pressure cooker, if I'm honest. You know, that kind of like there's a need to release something somehow.
What do you feel you want to say to your parents at that time?
How fucking dare you?
Right. Yeah, say it again. How fucking dare you?
How fucking dare you?
Yeah. What do you feel as you say that?
Better. Still feel angry.
Does it feel okay to feel angry in this moment?
Yes and no.
So why yes, why no?
Yes, because it's justified. It's valid. It's real. But I suppose no, because it's uncomfortable. It's not
so
what
it's unfamiliar.
Yes, thank you. And there's kind of this, what am I going to do? You know, what do I do with this in a way?
And is your inner critic having an opinion at the moment?
Yeah, there is
So,
a bit of that.
what's it saying?
It's trying to damp it down. This could be, this could lead to, this could have difficult repercussions,
What does it think that's going to happen if you feel some anger about something that happened 40 years ago?
Or it might break something. You might have an accident. It's a bit late now, isn't it? Those are kind of things I can think coming in.
Just for a minute, imagine seeing your inner critic. But last time it was sort of down here, it might be somewhere different. Where do you see your inner critic?
It's sort of there right now.
I'd like you to turn to it and like to say to it, and you can fuck off too.
And you can fuck off too.
How does that feel?
Good.
Yeah, good. So just let yourself have a bit of the energy of that.
Yeah.
That you had the right and you have the right to feel angry. You don't have the right to go and vomit that anger at someone. You don't have the right to go and hurt someone, but you have the right to feel angry and you have the right to have the energy of your anger.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it feels quite healthy.
Right. Because it's a boundary. Mm-hmm. You were violated. Something that was your choice to make was taken away from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. And, yeah.
What do you feel now, just in the recognition of that?
It's a mixture of things. I still feel the anger there. There's relief that I suppose it's been acknowledged, that I've acknowledged it, you've acknowledged it. And I don't know that I've acknowledged it sort of to such a great extent before. And that there's still a bit of sadness there that it's taken this long. There's no point denying that, I guess. But I suppose better late than never.
Right. Yeah. And, different people discover different things about themselves and their emotions at different points. There isn't a right way and a wrong way, but there is a massive opportunity that's here.
Yeah.
And the goal of this work we're doing right now is not to just try and get rid of your anger. I would like you to leave here feeling angry. just so you're aware. It's like, you may or may not, and they're not attached to that, but just so you're aware that the purpose of this is not to effectively release your anger so you walk away feeling bathed and pure and empty. It's like, yes, in time, we want there to be a metabolization and digestion of your anger. But part of your journey with anger is to make friends with it, to get used to it, to discover how it feels.
Yes.
Because it's not, there's all this history and story that there's good emotions and there's bad emotions. There's like the good little girl being accommodating and being happy and being smiley and being this and being that. And her being sad or her being rageful or her being angry is not okay. The frame that I have is all of those feelings are welcome. And actually the gift of sadness is love and joy, because you can't have love and joy without risking sadness, which is the loss of something we love when we feel sad. So if we can't have sadness, we can't have love, because they're two sides of the same equation. We can't have power and we can't have boundaries and strength without having our anger, because it's the fuel. It's like it's the strength that goes, I'm angry because my boundary has been violated and I'm going to say no. And I'm going to defend my no. So we need to make friends, become familiar with your anger, not as a negative emotion that we need to purge and get rid of, but as a feeling that is entirely necessary and healthy as part of your experience. Now, it's not that you want to spend the rest of your life feeling angry the whole time. It's like waves in an ocean. Sometimes the anger wave comes and we feel it, go, wow, yeah, I feel angry about that. But because we know it and because it's welcome, it doesn't consume us and overtake us and cause us to be unkind or bitchy or mean to someone, but we can have the energy of it to fuel a boundary or to say no or to call us to action, to actually, I really care about this. I feel angry. I'm going to stand up for it and I'm going to fight for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's looking at it in a it's a subtle shift, but it is a different way than I've looked at it before. Because before, certainly in workshops I've done in the past and stuff I've done, it is all about, getting rid of it all. And you think you'll get rid of it all, and then it'll be all right, and then it won't come back.
And then you can be a good little girl again.
Yeah, exactly. which isn't, it's not helpful. And what I've found with certainly looking at it, sort of comparing it to how I've been dealing with the sadness, there has been, on a positive, there has been a couple of times when there's been other sadnesses that have come up that I've cried through, or felt through, or acknowledged through, whatever, in this last couple of weeks, and then that's felt a lot better. And I suppose what I've come to some kind of realization of is that will be the pattern. That is the pattern of life.
Yeah.
It isn't that you do this and then it's gone and forgotten about, because there will be other things, and it's how that's dealt with. And I guess with what you just said now, it's the same with the anger. And I don't think I've taken that on board. That the anger is something that I'll feel and see if it's coming from my inner critic, and then deal with it in that way. Or I don't know, just be with it, but acknowledge it, or see if there's something that needs to be said, but in a way that's not cruel.
Right. That's the thing. It's not being, my invitation is not to be reactive or be sloppy with your anger, or to vomit it at people, or to use it in a kind of underhanded ways. It's to be able to have just that very clear boundary that says that's not okay.
Yeah.
And to be strong and to feel empowered in that boundary, not to feel like you're the little girl that's saying, sorry, can you please not do that? But to be in your kind of what we call your adult chair.
Yeah.
And as an adult to say, that's not acceptable. That is crossing a line for me. But you need the access to the strength. Otherwise it's a sort of empty, please don't do that, because there's no juice behind it.
Yeah. And again, I think, look at things from, what was it called? Transactional analysis. Yeah, which I did a little bit about years ago. That I'm a lot in my child and my parent,
right,
and it's not balanced with my adult.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good way of putting it. In a sense, what you're doing is you're projecting everyone else as the parent and the adult, and you're the little girl that's in a relationship with that. Part of how the little girl grows up is by being allowed to have her anger, which is a developmental stage you weren't really allowed to go through.
No, I wasn't. Was not safe to be angry at all.
How do you feel about that?
Angry?
Right, good. Say more about that. Tell me why you feel angry about that.
Well, because I was just like, I was crushed, really. Who I was, and anything that wasn't fair or wasn't right. I just put up with and had to put up with it, and just took it as being normal. And not even realised it wasn't, or why it wasn't, or and it comes back to, I think, what we've said before about that confusion.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy making, because
it is.
Your anger doesn't actually disappear.
Yeah.
But you can't feel it. So where does it go? It goes to your inner critic, and it gets turned against you. But a part of you knows deep down something's off here. Like this, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I knew from a very small age that nothing was right, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was.
Yeah.
But things were definitely uncomfortable, and I've taken that uncomfortableness and that not being rightness into the rest of my life, really.
Yeah. And when it comes back to the kind of one of the overarching themes that we're working on in terms of you deciding what you want at this chapter in your life and being able to go out and make that real, you need the strength of your anger. Because another way of putting it is that to say yes to you, you have to be able to say no to others. To say no to others, you need your strength. You need your power to be able to do that.
Yes.
If you can't say no to others, you can't say yes to you. You're always on someone else's agenda, trying to be accommodating, trying to fit in, trying to keep them happy. The more you integrate your strength and your power, the more you have your boundary, the more that you can say no, the more you can go, what do I actually want? And you can actually bring that forth and make it happen.
Yeah. And the other thing that hit me as well this week was looking again at the inner critic. I think there's sort of 5 things that you said that it does, that it makes you have no self-worth, that like spontaneity, becomes stuck, averse to taking risks. Another one. But I kind of ticked all that and it kind of made complete sense of why, because I know I have been stuck for the last few years, not deciding, do I move here, do I move there, I don't know where I want to move to, just don't know what I want to do. Yeah. And stuck in lots of other ways as well. And I hadn't linked it obviously with the anger and sort of finding some power. Yeah.
In this moment, having put the spotlight on it in the ways that we've been doing, how do you feel towards anger right now?
I feel like I can be friends with it more than I did before. It doesn't feel as scary as it did. Yeah, but it definitely, I don't feel as if I sort of need to sort of push it away somewhere and kind of just keep looking underneath and see.
Or vent it. Because by the way, just to be clear, because I think it's a hopefully helpful point to make, is there was a moment about 10, 15 minutes ago where the standard therapeutic thing is to get a pillow and scream into a pillow and get it out. And I didn't not make that choice for no reason. I don't want you necessarily. Yes, if that's what you need to do to vent it, that's fine.
I've tried that in the past and it's not really helped, if I'm honest.
Well, done in the wrong way, the danger is it falls in the frame of this is still not really welcome, so we need to get it out and get rid of it. And what I notice is the consequence of that. A lot of people that exist in those sort of therapeutic circles, which are about sort of venting anger and collapsing into sadness, a lot of those people, my observation is, they don't really have their power. Because power comes from not just, I'm going to scream and get rid of it and put it away neatly, but it's part of the ocean of feelings and emotions at once. Sometimes you're angry, sometimes you're sad, sometimes you're a bit worried about something, but it's not getting fixated, it's not repressing those things, and it's not getting fixated in those things. It's allowing it to move through, because often when anger comes up, it's a violation of a boundary, and it's the fuel that we need to reinstate the boundary. Yeah,
and I really hadn't thought about it like that. I mean, I've done the whole screaming in the car bit. I've done a lot over the years.
And I get people doing that sometimes. It has its place. It's just, my observation here is that falls under the same category of not really welcome, get it out and get rid of it. As opposed to befriending it.
Yeah.
And as opposed to it being a welcome emotion in your day-to-day experience. And yes, sometimes it may build up so much that is really helpful. But not as a do that to get rid of it, do that to help the flow, because there is a backlog. There's a whole bunch of anger that's not been felt that probably does, some that does need to flow through. But it's not seeing it as something to get rid of. It's seeing it as something to welcome as an important part of your healthy psychological functioning.
Yeah, not something to be feared, which I think is, well, I think that's what I said in the session. Yeah. No, that does make complete sense. And it feels quite comfortable way of thinking about it.
If you think about the next coming few weeks and your homework being welcoming your anger, befriending your, if your life was a book, this chapter would be called Bev Befriends Her Anger. That's in a sense what I'm inviting.
Well, it says again.
So if your life was a book, this chapter would be called Bev Befriends Her Anger.
Okay, all right. Sounds like something else we need like.
How do you feel towards that chapter?
Yeah, that feels okay actually.
So a few things to help you doing that.
Right.
You may well find, as I think has been the case anyway over the kind of last month or so, you may well find yourself remembering things from the past, like the example that you gave when you were 19 years old. Just let yourself think about those things. And if the anger comes up, let yourself have the anger. If you need to scream to pillow, absolutely. My point is not that I don't think that's helpful. I think it is helpful. I just don't want it to be used in a way to put it neatly aside. I want to invite it as being part of your experience. You may find some journaling is really helpful. So writing down some of the memories that come up, some of the feelings that come up. You may also find revisiting the piece around emotional styles when anger comes up, what do you do? So you may find that there's a few patterns, like anger comes up and you find yourself overanalyzing it as a way of actually getting rid of it. Or you may find yourself somatizing it, that it comes up and you don't give it enough space and you get a headache. But just see if you can observe and notice those things that come up in response to the anger. And you may also find, as it moves a bit more, as we were touching on a bit earlier, there's a part of you that's just like, fuck this whole program with Alex. I give you permission to not do your homework. I give you permission to take a few days and go, actually, I just want to go and have some fun. So I'm not advocating going and getting drunk and taking loads of drugs and partying all night. And
I think that'll happen in May, to be honest.
And in a healthy interpretation of wanting to have more spontaneity and joy, you do have my permission towards that.
Thank you.
Not that you need my permission anyway. Part of you owning your boundary is also really honoring the speed of this process and not pushing yourself to go harder and faster, but going, do you know what? I've just been away for the weekend. I didn't sleep well on Thursday night. I just need to leave myself alone and go and watch some crap TV tonight. Rather than I need to go and watch these really watch out for that pushing pattern coming in as well.
Because I know I even knew when I was doing it, but it was like, and I suppose because it's become such a routine way of living for such a lot of my life that I'm just so used to almost just powering myself forward to things. And and then I really did realize partway through, you've got the inner critic and the achiever pattern going here, girl.
And the boundary is not just with other people. The boundary is also with your inner critic.
Thank you.
And it's also with your achiever pattern.
Yes.
So if you find yourself telling your inner critic to get lost or to fuck off, great. If you find yourself with your achiever pattern telling you to go faster and you go, actually, I'm not going to, great.
Yes.
So give yourself permission to honor the speed of the process that truly serves you, not all the story about what you think should be happening.
Yes. Yes. And I need to get out of it. Well, it'd be helpful for me to get out of this. There's not that much time left, feeling. Therefore, I need to paddle faster.
You've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
You don't get there faster by pushing harder.
No.
You get there faster by following the process and listening to your heart in a sense along the way.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Oh, there's just one thing I can think of with the inner critic stuff. There's what I think is to do with the RID process, which I think there's that aspect of dealing with it, and the aspect of dealing with it in the heart module, which are different. Is that just how I feel? I would, because they're both a bit different, really.
Have you watched Module 9 of the Reset Programme, which has the inner critic?
Yes, I have. I managed to put that in these last couple of days
as
well.
You did. No, I did. As much as I'm going to tell you to slow down, I think that version is probably more helpful for you right now.
Right.
So because a lot we're talking about is boundaries, setting a boundary with your inner critic, I think would be helpful. So use that as a preference at the moment.
Right, rather than the heart
program.
Because I was listening to the Q&As, and the RID came up, and I thought, you're tired, you shouldn't look at this. But then I was actually, what was sort of healthy-ish was that I was curious. I wanted to know what that was.
I'm okay with that piece, because I think actually that is probably helpful.
Yes, so I have been, okay, so yes, so I'll, as Dad said, I've done another one. so okay, I'll use that more for now. Thank you, but I can't think of anything else.
Well, it's lovely to see you, and please go gently, and I will see you in a few weeks.
Okay, thank you, Alex.
Hope you found this week's episode helpful. This topic of anger is just incredibly important. As I talked about with Beverly, we really have to be able to feel that strength in ourselves to be able to say no. And in that saying no to other people, ultimately what we're doing is we're saying yes to ourselves. Ultimately, using our boundaries is an act of self-care and self-love. I'm curious about your relationship to anger. What have you been told about anger? What are your beliefs? What's your history? What's your story with anger? I'd love to hear your reflections in the comments below this video. So do share below the video. What do you believe? What's been your story with anger? Next week, we're going to be catching up with Sanaya. In next week's episode, Sanaya and I are exploring some of the key principles and some of the techniques that we use for learning how to calm and to retrain and reset the nervous system. Look forward to seeing you next week.